Problem of Pain by C.S Lewis. I said in one of my earlier podcast episodes, I think that was Growth, Embrace It or Dread It, that pain is not a bug in the system, pain is a feature. And it's something nearly every person I have met in life has had to reckon with at some point, pain. Not just physical pain, but emotional pain, mental pain, psychological pain. Pain that feels like torture. And it makes us ask a question that if someone good and all-powerful is running this entire operation, then why does this person allow pain? Now, one of my favorite authors, C.S Lewis, who I love so much, wrote a book titled The Problem of Pain. And this book was trying to answer that question. Now, the book was written in 1940. That was around the time where the Second World War was just breaking out. So literally the world was on fire while he wrote this book, literally. So it's not just some academic exercise, it's not just some theological arguments or some psychological debates. It's real. It was stated outrightly that the book isn't meant for someone in the middle of active suffering, because for anyone who is experiencing real grief right now, they need patience, they need support, they need love and care, and not a philosophical argument. Because years later, interestingly, his wife died and he wrote a very different book, that's C.S Lewis, titled A Grief Observed. Now that one is raw, that one is angry, it's filled with grief, and it doesn't read like a man who has figured out the problem of pain anymore. Even his own answer to pain didn't fully survive contact with his own grief. And I think that's something we should note before we discuss what the book is about. Now, before the book, or before Lewis even attempts to defend God, he made something unusual. There is an entire chapter arguing that most of us don't actually believe we've done anything wrong. And the claim is that modern people have lost their sense of sin. Not that we've become worse people, but that we've stopped being willing to call our own failures what they are. We've replaced guilt with self-esteem, and we've assumed that by default we are basically fine, and if something goes wrong, then it usually is someone else's fault or the system's fault. And this matters because everything that is being said afterward depends on the reader first admitting that a great deal of suffering in this world is something that we have caused by ourselves. And if you walk in the room already convinced that you're essentially blameless, any explanation involving human wrongdoing is going to sound like an excuse. So before defending God, he's trying to get the reader or with listeners to take an honest look at ourselves first. And then we have the account of how humanity ended up broken in the first place, what we call the fall of man. This isn't meant as science or literal history. It's more like a mythology, as in a story operating at a deeper level rather than a historical timeline. It's not that it's false, not myth as in false, but it's a story that carries a deeper meaning as to why our existence is this way. The picture is something like this. At some point, a creature capable of reasoning and self-awareness existed in a right relationship with God, because we did originally. We were dependent on God, but we were whole in ourselves. And at some moments, that creature turned inward and it made itself the center of its own attention instead of God. It wasn't just a dramatic act, but it was a fundamental reorientation of our existence, of our being, from looking outward to looking inward at the self. And that turn is what we refer to as the original sin. So it's not just a specific act that is passed down like a genetic defect, but it's an inherited posture that every generation is simply born into. He's not claiming certainty here, or the book rather is not claiming certainty. It's just offering the most coherent picture that can be constructed, aware that he's working in theology and imagination rather than history or evidence. Now, the main argument of this entire thing is God is supposed to be all-powerful and supposed to be all good. So either he can't stop suffering or he doesn't want to. Something has to give. Now, the first move is, or the first breakdown is on the term all powerful, because there's the argument that omnipotence doesn't mean God can perform actual nonsense, like creating a shape that is both a square and a circle. Now, that's not a limitation on power. It is just words that are strung together that don't mean anything. And this claim is that a world with real free will where nothing bad can ever result from it is the same kind of nonsense as creating a shape that is both a square and a circle. You can't have meaningful choices unless the world runs on consistent, predictable rules. Fire that warms your hands during the cold has to be the same fire that can burn your house down. Now, that consistency is the cost of it being real. It's the cost of the entire ideology being real. And then we have the part where we discuss goodness, and that's the part that most people have conflict with, because the argument is we've quietly redefined love as simply being nice and keeping someone comfortable. But that's not true. The comparison is for a parent who never disciplines a child because they want the child happy at all times. That's not love, that's indulgence. Real love wants what is genuinely good for someone and not just what feels good in the moment. Paul Washer said in one of the sermons of him that I love, he said, love is consistently seeking out the good out of someone. So if you love someone, you would consistently do everything to make sure that their existence is good in every sense it can be. It's not just how they feel, but how life pans out for them. We're genuinely seeking out that good. That's where the most quoted line that I love so much stems from, that pain is God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. And that idea is that when we tune out quieter signals, pain is the only thing that eventually breaks through. So when you want to go numb and go quiet, the easiest thing to break through from your heart is pain, or to break out of your heart is pain. And then we have the part that talks about hell, probably the most debated part of the whole book. Now, Lewis was trying not to make it sound like a divine punishment imposed from outside. So he reframes it that the doors of hell, he says, are locked from the inside, and people choose it repeatedly by refusing to relinquish their own self-will. It's a gentler picture than fire and brimstone, but it doesn't fully resolve the difficulty, because what remains is eternity, is permanent loss forever from a God who is supposed to be good. So there's a hard thing to reconcile. And the book ends talking about heaven. And this is less than an argument, it's more of a reframing. And the claim is that no amount of finite suffering can outweigh infinite joy. If that joy is real, then he's not trying to prove this mathematically, or we are not trying to prove it mathematically. What we're doing is we're trying to hold our present suffering up against the scale of eternity, and to let that scale change how heavy the suffering feels. Now, this book isn't trying to make pain feel good. It's trying to make your belief survive your pain for the joy that was set ahead of us. Well, thank you guys for listening. Peace out.